Hello and welcome to the postmodern approaches. There are 4 postmodern approaches: solution-focused brief therapy, narrative therapy, solution-oriented therapy, and language systems therapy. For the purpose of this lecture, we're going to stick to the first 2, solution-focused brief therapy and narrative therapy. The founders of the 2 postmodern approaches that we're going to cover here, the founders of solution-focused brief therapy, are Insoo Kim Berg and Steve DeShazer. Interestingly enough, those 2 were married. I thought they were kind of cute here, this picture of them. They were the pioneers that really established solution-focused brief therapy as an approach, and they both believed strongly that it was the counselor's role and function to help clients eliminate problems in the shortest amount of time possible. And they believed they could do this by focusing on what is possible and not worrying about gaining a real in-depth understanding of the problem. Michael White and David Epstein were the primary co-developers of the narrative approach, and the narrative approach basically avoids diagnosis, allowing for clients to really explore themselves and map the influences that the problem that they've had and what influence that has had on their lives. And there were several people involved in founding this theory, but Michael White and David Epstein were the primary founders. So we're going to start with an overview of solution-focused brief therapy, and then we'll go further into narrative therapy. The core concepts of solution-focused brief therapy, or also known as SFBT, is that there are multiple realities. No truth holds for every person, and all reality is subjective. Problems increase because people focus on them. This reminds me of one of my favorite Wayne Dyer quotes, who is my favorite self-help kind of guru guy, but he says, "What you focus on expands." And I think about that one all the time. I really like that. And then also with problems, if you focus on your problems, that's what you focus on. One of the goals for a counselor is to help clients realize that they have the power within themselves to make changes. On the right, you'll see a little quote from DeShazer and Berg. "If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Once you know what works, do more of it. And if it's not working, do something different." Pretty basic, huh? In solution-focused brief therapy, SFBT, it's very future-oriented. They don't really delve into the past. It doesn't really matter why. It just matters what's going on now and in the future. There's a belief that small change can elicit systemic change, that it doesn't take much. One little shift can kind of cause everything else to start shifting. The focus is on what's possible and what's changeable. There's little problem talk. It's mostly talk about what's possible, what you want. And again, the focus is on what the client wants, not what they don't want. Some clients find this frustrating because they want to come in, or they think they are supposed to come in and talk about their problems with a counselor. And this is a very different type of counseling. The quote says, "Believe in possibilities," and that's a real SFBT way of thinking. In solution-focused brief therapy, again, the focus is on solutions. That's all you see in this image is solutions. The role of the counselor in solution-focused is to help the client identify and to amplify change. So what is working? What are the clients able to change? And let's make that bigger. Let's amplify that in other areas of their lives. The counselor doesn't need to know every detail about a complaint to help resolve that complaint. That's that future talk and not really the past talk. The counselor helps clients see what's already working for them. What's going right in your life, let's do more of that. If it's working in this area of your life, let's bring that and make it work in this area of your life. The counselor is the expert in the process of change, but as with many of the theories that we've covered, the client is the expert in their lives. Here we have a few techniques of solution-focused brief therapy. When you hear of SFBT, the main thing that most people think of is the miracle question. This kind of goes along with my little fairy theme I have here. I picked an image of fairy dust, thinking that it relates to miracles and magic wands or things like that. So the miracle question basically is, if you woke up tomorrow and a miracle happened so that you no longer felt or did, fill in the blank, what would you or your friends notice? What would you see differently? What would be different about you? So this question can be asked in lots of different ways, related to feelings, behaviors, thoughts, environment, lots of different things. And this is the one that most people think of when you're doing solution focused. There's also the scaling question, and this can be used in lots of different theories as a technique. I use this one a lot, in particular in groups that I lead. So scaling means that you rate your level of, again, fill in the blank, but rate your level of anxiety about your grade in your theories course. And you would rate that anxiety as, let's just say, a 4, and then, which is pretty low. And then your counselor might ask you, what would it take to get you from a 4 to a 6? Oh, no, sorry, a 4 to a 2, therefore reducing your anxiety. And it can also go up or down depending on if it's something that you want more of or something that you want less of. The exception question is just basically that. Is there a time where you didn't fill in the blank? You didn't feel or you didn't behave, and then you have the client describe what they did differently when they weren't feeling that. Coping questions, this is where you give the client credit for times that they didn't behave or feel the way that they're trying not to, the way that's being a problem for them. For instance, how were you able to, fill in the blank? And even if it were just little times, it's kind of related to the exception question. Little successes is what you're looking for here. It plants the seeds of success for your client. And now we're moving along to narrative therapy. Narrative therapy is a very collaborative approach to therapy, kind of a teamwork idea. We avoid labeling and diagnosis in narrative therapy. And the counselor holds the view that the client is not the problem is the problem. And there's an effort to sort of externalize the problem, give it a name, and make it the problem is the problem. The counselor and the client really work closely together to create a new alternative life story for the client. With narrative therapy, I had a hard time doing bullet points because I felt like, which might be appropriate since this is about writing and really expressing, I felt like there were nuances that I would lose if I just did bullet points. So my 3 bullet points here, the first one is the stories we tell ourselves and the stories others tell us about ourselves, like think about your parents, grandparents, childhood friends. This becomes the lens through which we view our world, through which we view ourselves, self-esteem, all kinds of ways that we look at ourselves come from this. Constructing an alternative story changes the client. When you change those stories, you change those words that have been used to describe a person their whole life. It changes how they think of themselves, how they view themselves, and the lens through which they view themselves. Using new language and enlarging client perspective helps bring about new options for the client and new options for change. The role of the counselor in narrative therapy, as we said earlier, is collaborative. It's as a teammate with the client. The counselor helps the client in mapping the influence that the problem has had throughout their lives. The counselor works with the client to really explore that problem in depth. The counselor helps the client separate the problem from themselves and other people. This one I think is best understood in couples or family counseling. That, for instance, if a couple is struggling with money and it becomes this problem between the two of them, they might give that problem a name and externalize that problem. There's the couple, there's 2 individuals, and then there's the problem. They might name it like the money monster or something like that, but externalizing it so that it's not this thing between the 2 of them, it's an outside problem. And finally, the counselor works with the client to bring about their own personal change throughout the process of therapy. The therapeutic process from a narrative approach is, again, very collaborative with the client and the counselor working to name the problem. The counselor and the client work together to personify, almost vilify, the problem and to explore the damage from the problem. In the example used previously with the money monster, what damage has the money monster done to the couple? Instead of looking at what the couple did to each other and saying you did this or you did this, it's then externalized to the money monster did this. It sounds silly when I say it, but there you go. Also helping the client, the counselor works to help the client to define alternative meanings. This one I think of maybe childhood nicknames or things that parents or family said that might have had negative meanings, helping to reestablish that here's an alternate meaning that could have had for you. Finding exceptions to the problem, times when the client stood up to the problem or wasn't influenced by the problem. Again, kind of like solution focused, finding exceptions to when the problem was there. And then talking about the future and what it will be like without this problem. So you can see there are a lot of similarities between solution focused and narrative therapy. It's it's not focused on the client as the problem. The problem's the problem, and lots of talking about the future and possibilities. Some differences are that you do talk more about the problem in narrative therapy. There's lots of problem talk and then reworking that problem talk. And in solution focused, there's very little problem talk, just primarily possibilities talk. Thank you. And for our final slide, we have a little activity. Of course, I picked the miracle question for solution focused, because how could you not pick the miracle question? Think about a problem that you experience in your life. It can be a long-standing problem. It can be just a situational problem, but just a problem that you're experiencing right now. And ask yourself, and then please write it down and take notes and come prepared to share in class tomorrow. Ask yourself, if you woke up tomorrow and a miracle happened so that you no longer, and you fill in the blank, what would you or your friends see differently? And part 2 of that is, what would be the signs that a miracle had happened? What would we see you doing? How would your life be different? What could we notice? So be prepared to come to class tomorrow, and let's have a lively discussion about the miracle question.